13 days away from WrestleMania 39. WrestleMania is going Hollywood this year. The two-night extravaganza, April 1st, April 2nd, streaming live only on Peacock. Mike, I got to tell you, I know we talked a little bit before we came on the air, but I agree with your sentiment. There is not a ton that I'm not looking forward to at this year's WrestleMania. And I think one of the things that I've noticed over the past couple of weeks is this year it feels like more than ever, maybe in the last couple of years, I should say, there are storylines such as, Rey and Dominic Mysterio, Edge and Finn Balor on the Judgment Day, the whole Bailey Damage Control Becky Lynch storyline, the Sami Zayn Usos Kevin Owens storyline that we've talked about at nauseum. These are storylines that have really been building since the summer and early fall. And I feel like they're culminating at WrestleMania, where in years past it felt like a lot of the stories just started maybe right after the Rumble or right after Elimination Chamber. So it's giving me, as a fan, in my opinion, a lot more to look forward to, because these are stories that feel like they're going to finally end and culminate at the biggest show of the year.
Right, and the good thing about this booking that they've been showing us, Brandon, is that you can't really call who's going to win any of these matches, and I think it's super interesting when you're in a position where you can keep people guessing, especially in today's age with Twitter and things like that. It's powerful. I think that the majority of the matches, and I've been watching pretty much every week, I can't call and tell you who's going to win basically any of them, and I think that's the secret sauce to a great wrestling show, two great storylines, and I'm really looking forward to everything on the card, buddy. And everything I think from the top to bottom has been great. I think that the best move was to put Cody Rhodes in the main event of WrestleMania. I mean, think about it, Brandon. You're thinking about two guys, Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. They were like the leaders of the COVID era in their respective companies. And now it's like they're coming together and having this big match. So now we're out of COVID. We're on to running bigger arenas now. And now they're going to run the biggest arena and the largest arena probably that they could in SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, and it's going to be a wonderful night. And I'm just really looking forward to it. I think, especially one thing that hasn't been announced that probably won't be announced. I'm looking forward to seeing what my guy LA Knight's doing. What is
Yes,
he?
L.A. Knight.
What's he going to do? Because I mean, I know that he's been deeply inspired by guys like Stone Cold and The Rock. I mean, everything from this guy's delivery on the mic to the way that he works in the ring. He's very much Austin or The Rock esque, more of our friend Dwayne. So I mean, it would be a great way for The Rock to promote the XFL and so forth is
Yeah.
by showing up on the WrestleMania stage with a jersey on with that 90. I think you used to wear either the number 94 or 97. So rep that, got a promo on LA Knight, and lay him out with the people's elbow. That's
So,
kind of what it.
so Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we talked at the Rumble time about, we both kind of thought Rock was coming back. It was going to be Rock and Roman at Mania. Obviously, that did not happen. They did the turn on Sami Zayn that night, which was, oh my god, the greatest television I ever saw at 12:15 in the morning in my life. I obviously have a house full of family, trying to be as quiet as I could while also screaming in my mind like, oh my god, this is actually happening. Uh, and now here we are, Roman Cody main event WrestleMania 39. A lot of the internet fans and wrestling fans out there seem like it's a foregone conclusion that Cody's going to win this match, and I agree with you. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, and I am leaning towards picking Roman to actually retain the championship for two reasons. Number one, I think you've gotten this close to being 1,000 days as champion. I think you have to do it, because I think for Reigns to pass Hulk Hogan means something. And I don't think we're ever going to get this chance to do it again. And I think it's about time that we have Reigns move as close to, obviously, he's not going to reach Bob Backlund or Bruno Sammartino, but for him to be as close to that number as possible. And then number two, like, and I've been telling people this, and I told you this, I think, a little bit, is I don't know the direction of Roman's character after WrestleMania if he were to lose the championship. The one thing I do know is Cody Rhodes is undefeated since he came back to WWE. And you can build the story of Cody not being able to take down Roman the first time and him spending a year to get stronger and stronger and to come back and to be hungry to finally, eventually take down Roman Reigns, potentially at next year WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
I like that, but don't forget about that. Don't forget about this, Brandon. You kind of took it out of my mouth, but also one thing you gotta think about. I mean, you could really have realistically. I mean, after WrestleMania, you could realistically have, you know, over the course of the next year, another number one contender at the belt, Sami Zayn, or who knows what's going to happen with the NXT championship. Braun Breaker, you got to think that he's been in NXT for quite a long time.
That's true.
Since the relaunch in September of 21, not just September 22, September of 21. Who knows if he's going to be called up? Who knows if over the course of that year they're going to build him as legitimate. It's going to be interesting though, because by the sounds of things, they might try to break up the championships, but I don't think that's a smart move. I think that the best move right now is to keep the belt on Roman. I agree with you. Usually we don't agree on things, but I just believe that um, I understand that you would want to put the belt on Cody to keep him hot, and that might kill his push, but I don't think it does. I mean, this was a guy that really, through the first months of AEW, really was one of the most captivating characters on that show. I don't think he necessarily needs a championship to succeed. It kind of reminds me of his father because he rarely won championships, and he still is regarded as one of the greatest performers ever, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. So if you look at it from that perspective, just being in the main event of WrestleMania in this moment, I mean, I think a lot of people, I know that when I went to Niles in July of 2017 to watch Cody Rhodes, that I wouldn't have imagined him getting to the main event of WrestleMania, one of the biggest WrestleManias ever, so quickly. So I think Roman Reigns, if I was a betting man right now, I'd put my money on Roman Reigns to retain. And who knows, maybe even the next month um, in Puerto Rico, or a month later at that at the King of the Ring show in Saudi Arabia. Maybe they pull the trigger then. But that's the interesting part about it, Brandon, is that the longer you keep the belt on Roman, the longer that you build suspense. Is it going to be Cody Rhodes? Is it going to be Sami Zayn? Is it going to be Braun Breaker? I think you basically have another year of storytelling here with this bloodline thing. I don't think it's time to end it at all.
So, can I ask you? Because my good friend Joey Schneider, who's a huge wrestling fan, pitched this to me last week on the show, and I'm very intrigued by it. And I'm going to ask you about it. He pitched Reigns loses to Cody, but the Usos retain against Sammy and Kevin. And the bloodline dynamic changes because now Roman, the head of the table, doesn't have the championships, but the Usos do have the championships, and they become quote unquote the head of the table. I thought it was a very interesting pitch.
That's a very interesting pitch, but I think when I think about power and I think about, if you're going to make the Usos baby faces, I think that you've got to have the reign of reigns sort of just tower over them. And I think the way that they could tower over them is, if Zayn and Owens end up getting the titles on night one, then it's like the Usos have to work their way back into their good graces with Roman. And I think that if you're going to do that, if you're going to make the Usos sympathetic, you have to have them lose the championship, if that makes sense. So I think I think it's I think it very well could be a strong weekend for the bloodline. I think that everyone in the faction can retain, but I think it would be great for night one if Zayn and Owens win the titles off of them and that streak. And then through there's so many tag teams that are available that could eventually dethrone Owens and Zayn from there. I believe I've been watching the Creed brothers a little bit here and there on NXT. Strong tag team, physical, bring them up and then maybe have them feud with Zayn and Owens. But I think that, you know, one thing that we got to remind ourselves is no matter what happens on Saturday, April 2nd, April 1st, and Sunday, April 2nd, the Bloodline storyline with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes and all these people in the Usos is not over. There's still time to build. And I think that if I was betting on anything, I would say Owens and Zayn win the tag titles night one, and then there's some cracks in the bloodline. Everybody thinks, wow, Roman might be losing it, but he digs deep and he figures out a way to beat Rhodes on night two.
Let me ask you this. I would book Owens and Zayn versus the Usos to main event night one. It sounds like that's not the direction they're going. It sounds like it's going to be Show and Rhea Ripley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, which that brought SmackDown Friday night is absolutely what they needed to get me a little bit more involved in their feud, because it was a little lackluster in my opinion to that point. But your thoughts on sort of that the main event of night one, and then how you sort of split up the card then between night one and night two.
Well, if I'm going to split the card between night one and night two, the most captivating storyline in all of wrestling right now is the Bloodline, right?
Yep.
And those two matches, they are one and the same. So for that show to end on a high note is important, Brandon. But like I was saying, if they have plans to make the fans happy and to put the belts on Zayn and Owens, it's not really in their best interest to do that at the end of the show. I think it's because, you know, to really build Roman's desperation. I mean, it would be in the middle of it would be, backstage clamoring for them, like, "What are you doing? Like, why did you lose?" And I just for whatever reason, it would be hard for them to um, I guess, duplicate a scenario like they did at the Royal Rumble, and it's going to come down to a lot of different factors. But I don't think they've really decided on who's going to win this tag match. This is probably the toughest one for me to call: Usos and Owens and Zayn. But if it's suddenly decided to make it the main event of night one, something big is going to happen to make us think there could be more cracks and more cracks. But like I was saying, it really is going to come down to what hot angle they want to put at the end of the show. Right now, they're saying Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, but they could change that day of. And for me, I see Charlotte, who's better typically as a heel, and Rhea Ripley, who's kind of wrapped up in her own storyline with Rey Mysterio. So I think that right now it says Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, but that's all rumors. That's not necessarily true. And I could just see it being switched at the end of the night and some hot angle really happening. Roman realizing, oh, he's losing trust in the bloodline. What's going to happen? Oh my gosh. And he's that strong enough and that great enough to have another WrestleMania moment and win it the next night. So I think the best call is to make the tag team match main event night one. It builds the legitimacy of the tag titles. But at the end of the day, it depends on how they want to tell the story. Do they want to tell the story in the back, or do they want to tell the story up front? And if they do it earlier in the show where Owens and Zayn win the tag titles, there might be something backstage where something truly develops. But I think the people are clamoring so much for this storyline that it makes absolute sense to put it in main event night one.
Cena Theory, Edge Finn Balor, the two women's championship matches. Um, Brock and Amos. We don't know what's happening with Bobby Lashley and Bray Wyatt, which turning into a very interesting development. But I think that those matches, like I think you split up the women's matches, each one night for the championships. I think you sort of need to split Edge and Cena just to create that legend, if you will, star power, split them up one night each. I think you could split Lesnar and Amos and Bray and Bobby if that ends up happening in each of the one nights. And so I think we are getting, in my opinion at least, a very balanced card where I think there's a real opportunity where you can tell each story on a given night. The one match that I'm not sure of where goes where is Ray and Dominic. Because that story is so hot. Do you put that on the same night as Rhea and potentially Finn and Edge? Do you have the Judgment Day all in one night? Do you split it up where Dom goes the first night, maybe, and then Rhea focuses on her own the second night, or vice versa? How would you book that?
This is interesting, Brandon. I think you make the Hell in a Cell match on night one. I think you need a particular spectacle to get your casual fan in there. And I think that that's why they're pulling the trigger with this Hell in a Cell match. Love the move because really you're wanting to get your casual fan to watch the show, put it on Saturday night. People have an attraction to seeing Hell in a Cell matches. Love that move on night one. And then if we're gonna do um, something for the next night, I think you put. I think it sounds like Rhea and Charlotte is going to be on night one, so I'll keep that there. And then from there, I would put Ray and Dominic on night two. It's very invested. I think you could make a career versus um, basically where if Ray loses, he would have to lose the mask and thus retire. And I believe that Rey Mysterio will beat his son in the end. And I think they would be able to hug it out, you know. And then Monday on Raw, they go back to Dominic being a heel. I don't know how they want to do it, but I see a career threatening match in Ray's future with Dominic, and I don't see him retiring. I see Ray pulling it out because he's got more gas in the tank. And you can continue to build with the story because Dominic has tons of legs, tons of wiggle room in this. Can he go to a new brand after a WWE draft and feud with different wrestlers? I mean, what's that look like? I see a career threatening situation, but Ray pulling it out, and
Now,
I see that happening
uh,
on night two.
Mike, I've been very interested with this whole Rey Mysterio going into the Hall of Fame because I was trying to think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there has been a situation. Obviously, we've had active wrestlers who are semi-retired come back, like Goldberg in the Hall of Fame, and these wrestlers that have, like Ric Flair went in the Hall of Fame, wrestled his last match the next night. But I don't recall ever having an active wrestler like Rey Mysterio going into the Hall of Fame and then continuing his career as a full-time superstar. I think it's very unique, and I think it's actually helped the story with him and Dom.
I think this is the first time that a non part time performer has been going in without a retirement
That's what I was
stipulation.
gonna say. Yeah,
A non part time performer. Because if you remember, Hulk Hogan went in 2005, but then had matches after that as a part time wrestler. Um, they and then from there, Ric Flair went in as technically an active performer, but they were building to his retirement. I don't see that happening. I think it just goes to show that Rey Mysterio, he's in that same, he's in a class all to his own. When you think about the most popular, um, when you think about the most popular Latino or Mexican American wrestlers that have ever lived, he is the most popular guy. There's no one that's been on his level and probably will ever be again. So I think it's a worthy honor, especially if you couldn't get Batista for this ceremony. Remains to be seen. They could still have Batista in there. Um, who knows what's going to happen? I think though, it's fun to um, it's fun to see the classes build off of location. So 2 years ago, during the 2 years ago during the COVID induction, it was the NWO and Hulk Hogan going in Tampa, Florida. The year after that, it was Taker going in Dallas, and now we have Rey Mysterio going in California, LA, close to San Diego. And then if you look at the following year, looks like tailor made for probably the greatest modern day manager of all time, the greatest manager of modern times, Paul
Paul
Heyman,
Heyman in Philly.
as
Yep.
a as the first ballot, first time Hall of Famer. Uh, Probably the most important guy on that card. So the Hall of Fame always interests me. It's probably the most fun part of the year for me is seeing who goes in the Hall of Fame and seeing who needs to go in the Hall of Fame after that. I like Greg Muta going in, just retired over in Japan this year. Over, I think the month after Wrestle Kingdom, they did a show. Either they did it during Wrestle Kingdom and then they did it the following month. I think it's a guy that greatly deserves to go in the Hall of Fame, especially with his classics with Steamboat, Flair, and I also hear Mick Foley's going to induct somebody, so I'm interested to see who goes in from his side. if he's going to induct someone. It's going to be so much fun, but I see Ray pulling it out and not retiring and continuing to stay an active performer week to week because the guy draws. He builds the house show business, and I think it would be wrong to take him off um, unless injuries continue to persist. And in that case, he might just want to be done. He's done it for 30 years. He's one of the most deserving Hall of Famers ever, and I'm glad to see him go in.
I agree. Now, Mike, this is a very tricky situation for me because as much as I want to see it happen, I don't think it's going to happen. But would you give one of the GOATs, the 16th-time world champion, John Cena, one more run, even if it's for a day, as the United States champion?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I don't see a scenario where, I mean, that's probably my easiest one to call. Um, it would be tough to have Austin Theory win clean in this situation solely because he's a young guy. He's been in desperate storylines where he's been desperate to grab that brass ring with the money in the bank, and they haven't pulled the trigger. Um, and they've had him, I think they squandered that with the money in the bank. Interviewed Austin Theory a couple weeks ago for WKBN. Super guy. They just came
I
through.
did see that. You did a great job on that. I forgot to text you and tell you, but great job on that, Mike.
Thanks, man. It was a great interview. He's an awesome guy. He's the future of this business. But I think it's just not today. I think if you're Cena, I think that he's there to win the U.S. Championship one more time. He's going to issue an open challenge for the next night on Raw, and I think he's going to lose it to a debuting performer on NXT from NXT or somebody new who's recently in talks with them, maybe like a Jay White, somebody like that. And I think that would be a great way to put over somebody else. But I think a strong match with Cena and Austin Theory doesn't necessarily hurt Theory, though. I think that he's not some guy that's going to take that much of a hit. I mean, you're going up against one of the top 10 all time greatest wrestlers. I mean, and all time greatest superstars ever in John Cena. I think being in that situation, like Theory told me, he said it would be a dream come true for him
Yep.
and help his journey come full circle. And I think that's not necessarily burying a performer. It's great for him to be on that level. That's the same way I feel about Brock Lesnar and Omos. Sometimes it's time for the veterans to give back, and just being in the ring with somebody that's a lot younger and a lot less polished could help them in the long run. I mean, years and years we've seen, guys like Booker T and Edge square off. Guys like Jericho and William Regal square off in the mid card of these Mania cards. And you're like, what? You're like, why was this put together? Just two big dudes? I don't think that's the case. I think Lesnar is, in a way, doing business on the way out when a lot of people, wouldn't think that of him. Same thing with Cena. I think Cena wins the U.S. title. I think that's about the one I'm most secure in. I don't know about you, but
So
I like.
the one I'm most confident for sure, I think, is Asuka's gonna beat Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. I think that's the one I'm running the most strong about. I don't know about Cena in theory because I think there's a possibility where maybe Cena doesn't want to win the title and they give Theory a huge rub and come out as a huge heel, being a dickhead basically about how he beat Cena and he's the greatest this and he's the greatest that. Uh, Bianca and Asuka is probably my biggest lock. My second biggest, I do think, to your point, Brock Lesnar, I believe, is going to actually beat Amos with an F5.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was put on the card to be a spectacle. I don't know how the hell Lesnar is going to be able to get that giant up. And a lot of people are against it, and I'm fine with it. I totally get the reason why they did it, but I'm very interested. So you think this is going to be Brock Lesnar's last WWE match? Am I hearing you correctly?
I don't think it's going to be. It may not be his last match because we all know Saudi Arabia comes in, but um, I think that just him taking a position on the mid card for this show is major for him. I mean, this is probably the middle of the card. I mean, really, the guy's never really been on the middle of the card if we're thinking about it. He's always either been in the championship match or the 1A match. I mean, if we go through Lesnar's WrestleManias, first WrestleMania, he won the world championship in '03, and then he was in that huge match with Goldberg. And then from there, he wasn't at a lot of WrestleManias up until 2013. Triple H breaking the Undertaker streak, championship match in 15
Yep.
middle match in Ambrose with 16. So right there, I mean, it's been like 7 years
Yeah.
since Lesnar's been in a match where he's faced a younger performer. Ever since then, he's really been in the main event for the most part, or been in a
Yeah.
championship.
I mean,
So
Goldberg, Reigns, Rollins. But that was a championship match. McIntyre was obviously a championship match. And then last year with Reigns again. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Uh, okay, so this Bray Wyatt situation, Mike. What do we think of it? Is the match gonna happen? I mean, are we gonna get Lashley and Wyatt? Is Lashley gonna do an open challenge? Well, what's happening with this?
I don't see it really as a match, Brandon. I kind of see the Hurt Business. I would like to see the Hurt Business reforming in the coming weeks, maybe after WrestleMania. But I see this as a way, WWE might be telling the people that, Bray Wyatt has been, has ducked out. You know, maybe that might be what's happening. I mean, he hasn't showed up on certain shows. I hopefully wish that's not a real life situation and that he's having issues. But I would like to see a slow build even past WrestleMania to a Hurt Business and all of the Wyatt Six, all of those characters from the Firefly Funhouse. When we saw Wyatt come back at Extreme Rules, we saw all the life-size characters of the Funhouse, and maybe that would be a great way to bring Bo Dallas back, bring maybe an Eric Young back, a Dominic Dijakovic, all those performers to make him a part of his faction. I think that's when Wyatt was at his best, when he would let a faction and he led a group of guys to where they needed to go. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to happen at WrestleMania. If we pull the trigger after WrestleMania, that's fine. It's a little bit disappointing that Lashley and Wyatt, they seem like two completely different performers. And if they square off with each other, I think Wyatt has to win the match. And it's a shame because Lashley's getting more and more popular. But I mean, if there was probably one match I'm least looking forward to seeing, it's probably that one, unfortunately. And I'm a big Bray Wyatt guy, but such is life.
Is there any match that maybe we haven't talked about or a lot of people are talking about as a match that not a lot of people are looking forward to that maybe you yourself are looking forward to?
Um, it's interesting. I would say Lesnar and Omos in there, just because they think awful highly of the guy. Whenever they put guys in certain situations, they view them very highly, and I like Lesnar and Omos.
All right. Well, I think that will do it for this year's WrestleMania preview and for the show today. As me and Mike have talked about a lot, I do think too, Mike, they're gonna try to put on one of the most spectacular WrestleManias that we've had because of the fact of the impending sale. And again, whether or not that's gonna happen, whether it's going to Saudi, whatever we know. But I think you made a great point to me last time about they're gonna try to make this a special WrestleMania because they're going to want to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great card, Brandon. Thanks for having me on, and it was very, very enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to a big Mania weekend. That's for sure. Hopefully, bigger than last year.
A lot of fun. Last year's was great. I don't know how they're going to top it, but this card, certainly with the in-ring ability, I believe has the potential to do so if they do it right. You like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.